When the republic is confused and when the law is twisted, when the word is ignored, there must be an immediate briefing. Fellow Americans, here he is, straight from the heart of Toto town, within the clandestine chambers of the world-famous conservative college, America's favorite professor, officially recognized as first in the nation. This is The Briefing with Professor Toto.
Ladies and gentlemen, Fulton County, Georgia has admitted, their public officials have admitted what you and I already knew. Yeah, we knew it 4 years ago. They have admitted that their election was illegal. During a hearing before the Georgia State Election Board, county officials from Fulton County acknowledged, I want you to listen to these numbers carefully, they acknowledged that 315,000 early ballots, that's an amount 3 times the size of the city of New Orleans. 315,000 mail-in ballots. The culprit was always the mail-in ballot. Donald Trump told us if he loses, it will be because of the mail-in ballot. Sure enough, they testified that 315,000 mail-in ballots that was cast in the 2020 election were unlawfully certified. Yet, nonetheless, they were included in Georgia's final official results. And we're talking about a race that Joe Biden won by 11,000 votes. Did you hear it? Did you hear it? 315,000 illegal ballots were cast in a state given to Joe Biden by a mere 11,000 votes. Now remember, for 4 years, the political class has told me and you to move on. Nothing to see. The most secure election in history is what we were told. But you see, truth has a stubborn habit, my fellow Americans. You can bury it, you can delay it, you can ridicule it. The only problem is you cannot kill that thing. Truth has a life of its own. And Donald Trump told us, he said there was more than fraud. He said the system itself was broken, unaccountable, and protected from any legitimate scrutiny. And now, not because of Donald Trump and not because of Professor Toto, but because of that itty-bitty thing called time. Do you remember me teaching you years ago about oh Lord, what did I teach? The temper of the times. I told you when all of this was going to be found out, after the temper of the time had subsided. And I told you back then, one day I'll come to this microphone, I said, and I'll be reminding you of when I said that. Well, here we are. And I told you so. Oh, I told you so. Here we are. Here, you and I are living on the other side of time. The system is beginning to expose itself. What's being exposed right now is not just a dramatic plot, but basically it boils down to this: certification without lawful verification. That's it. These ballots were certified without lawful verification. They were accepted, these ballots were. They were processed and they were certified without any chain of custody documentation required by law. That's not a theory. That's not a conspiracy. That's not a rabbit hole. That's an administrative fact pattern that is now being proven. What they're proving is you don't need millions of fake ballots to corrupt an election. You only need officials to certify numbers that are not legally authorized to certify. And this was the very reason on January the 6th that our senators were going to stand and refuse to accept Georgia's numbers. Remember, Mike Pence was supposed to shut the Senate down and give Georgia time to rectify this very problem. Donald Trump said in 2020, word for word, I quote, "They are certifying numbers that they cannot prove." Bam! Boy, was that the truth. And here we are, you and me, the crazy people. Oh yes, here we are, right again. Donald Trump was mocked when he said that. And now those same offices are being dragged into court because they cannot produce the records. My friend, here's the uncomfortable truth that the media never explained to you. The courts in America, no matter what they tell you, they did not rule that the election was clean. No court in America ever ruled that. I know they want to gaslight you and make you think it went to all these different courts. No. All of these courts ruled on standing, timing, and jurisdiction. Procedure, not truth, not the merit of the argument. We have never been to court, ever, where the merits of the argument were ruled upon. Think about that. Judges did not want to be the spark that lit that fuse in America. Trump knew that would happen. He warned us that would happen. And ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, my fellow Americans, this is the moment we all knew was coming. Congratulations to you, the one that kept telling everybody something's not right, the one that saw. Your mistake is you were not blind. Which brings me to a very deep subject that I want to give you my insights into tonight. You're going to need to sit down for this. So if you're at home, you got children running around, tell them to sit down. Tell Professor Toto's fixing to educate everybody. All right, everybody watch me now. What I'm about to walk you through is going to require you to think, not feel, not react, but think. And I know that's asking a lot in 2025, but I want to go back over that phrase that I introduced to most of America 4 years ago. Fraud vitiates everything. Do you remember the first time you heard that? The hope that it brought to your heart. Do you remember how those words sounded almost this beautiful? Almost brought a peace when you first heard Professor teach about fraud vitiates everything, because surely we were going to see the day when fraud would vitiate everything. That phrase, fraud vitiates everything, I've been thinking about it for 4 years, and of course, my main question is, why didn't fraud vitiate, undo the election of Joe Biden? And it didn't. We all have to admit that. We all have to confess that indeed, Joe Biden served a full 4-year term, as I told you he would, and his presidency was not undone, even though we're learning what we always knew, that fraud vitiates everything. So I have had a long time to think about it. And I've come up with some things that's troubling and yet reassuring. It's going to require you to truly hear me tonight. The phrase fraud vitiates everything is a moral principle. And it's powerful, but only when it's convenient. Tonight, I'm going to show you the greatest magic trick in American jurisprudence. I'm going to show you how the same courts, the same judges, the same legal system can look at fraud in one case and say, void it all. And they can look at fraud in another case and say, well, let's not be too hasty. Same principle, same court, different outcomes. By the end of this class tonight, you're going to understand why fraud did not vitiate the election of Joe Biden. Let's start with the basics. Fraud vitiates everything. What does it mean? Vitiate is a Latin legal term which means to impair, to invalidate, to corrupt so thoroughly that it just cannot stand. Vitiate is a powerful word. When fraud is present at the foundation of something, a contract or a deed or a marriage. Quick example. If someone in my church marries someone and you find out that the person you married is not the person, maybe they were a homosexual and you didn't know it, maybe a child molester, you didn't know it, had a criminal history they never told you about, then fraud was committed upon you. Maybe they were in bankruptcy and they're about to lose everything. You didn't know this. You went into that marriage under fraudulent pretenses. Those marriages are annulled. Why? They never existed to begin with, because that is a illegal contract. You can never build a contract on fraud. Ever, ever, ever. You cannot build legitimacy on a lie. Now, this is not controversial. What I'm teaching you now is American Law 101. If I sell you a car and tell you it's got 50,000 miles on it, but I rolled back the odometer from 250,000 miles, that sale is void. If I forge your signature on a house deed, transfer your house to myself, no matter what I signed, that contract is void. If a corporation lies to shareholders about earnings, those financial statements are void. The SEC will come looking or knocking. People will go to prison because fraud vitiates everything. If a witness lies under oath, their testimony is struck from the record. The jury is told to disregard it because fraud vitiates everything. But here's where it gets interesting. And this is something I've been ruminating on for 4 years. This is where we cross over from Toto's classroom into a real courtroom, into the smoke-filled back rooms where the real decisions get made. What happens when fraud isn't in a car sale or a property deed? What happens when fraud is in an election? Now that's where suddenly the principle starts to get complicated. Now here's the thing that the mainstream media will never tell you. Elections have been voided in America. Let's know that. There's been many times when elections have been voided in America by judges and courts, by the legal system. Whenever fraud was proven, then what would happen was the judge would say, this cannot stand. Maybe it's a county commissioner race, city council race, school board election, state legislative contest. As a matter of fact, just a few years ago in Texas, a judge ordered a complete redo of a county judicial election because over 1,400 illegal votes were documented. 1,400 votes. And the judge said, that election is void. Do it again, because fraud vitiates everything. The principle held, the system worked, justice was done. But notice something. County commissioner, city council, school board, state legislature. Notice the smallness of those elections. This is very important. I'm going to help you settle this tonight in your mind. What's missing from that list? Something much bigger with much more consequence. The President of the United States. And here's what I have figured out, and it's taken me years to do it. The principle fraud vitiates everything has what I call an altitude limit. Below a certain elevation, fraud vitiates everything. Above that elevation, fraud vitiates nothing. Think of it like this. Think of the clouds. Below it, you get justice. But above the clouds, we go for stability. Below the clouds, we go for principle. Above the clouds, we go for pragmatism. Below the cloud, we go for truth. But above the clouds, we go for survival. And who gets to decide where that cloud line is? The people in the clouds. The same judges, same institutions, the same power structures that benefit from things staying exactly the way they are. They're the ones that get to say, well, fraud at this level above the clouds requires a remedy. But fraud at that level, way above the clouds, now that's complicated. Follow me? Below the clouds, let's provide a remedy. Above the clouds, let's provide stability. It wasn't complicated in a county election or a school board election, but suddenly when we're talking about the highest office in the land, when we're talking about one position that affects every single American, when we're talking about the commander-in-chief of the greatest military, the most powerful military in human history, now suddenly that clean little principle, fraud vitiates everything, suddenly becomes very, very complicated because of the clouds. Now we have to get calculated. And here's what you need to understand about these people. In their minds, the people above the clouds, specifically the SCOTUS, the president, the people above the clouds, in their minds, they're not being hypocritical. In their minds, they're being responsible. Write that in your notes. In their minds, they're not violating the principle. In their minds, they're safeguarding a much higher principle. Because to the institutional mind, to the judges, the bureaucrats, the career officials, the people that spend their whole life inside the machine above the clouds, order is justice. Societal order is justice. Stability to them is the highest good. Continuity of office is the sacred trust to them. They've made a philosophical decision that most of them have never even said out loud. It's somewhere in here. They've decided that a society running on a comfortable lie is better than a society confronting an uncomfortable truth. That was a mouthful. I hope you heard what I said. They've decided that to keep society running on a comfortable lie, because the whole nation knows Joe Biden was never our president. We know it. They know it. Everybody knows it. Even my mama knows it. Everybody knows it. All right? But it's okay. The greater good was done. The office was preserved. Continuity has continued. They see themselves, and by the way, what I'm teaching you right now is something I've had to figure out on my own to be able to deal at the loss of this great principle: fraud vitiates everything. They see themselves as the guardians of continuity. Priest, they see themselves as the priest. It's no different than the Catholic Church or any church protecting their priest against pedophilia. They really don't think that they're harming anyone because they're protecting the church. You understand? So these politicians see themselves as priests of the temple of democracy, protecting the sacred mystery of democracy from your profane questions, no matter how legitimate they are. How dare you ask if an election was legitimate? How dare you demand to see the evidence? How dare you expect the same standard applied to a presidential race that we apply to a county commissioner? Don't you understand? We're protecting you. We're protecting you from the chaos of knowing. We're protecting you from the disruption of truth. We're protecting society from the consequences of admitting what everyone else already suspects. In case you ever wondered why the SCOTUS never took the case, in their mind, the greater good was to not take that case in 2020. See, they don't believe they're denying justice. They believe they're redefining it. Justice is not truth anymore. It's not fairness anymore. It's not fraud vitiates anything anymore. Justice is whatever keeps the machine running, whatever preserves the appearance of legitimacy. It's whatever lets them go home at night and tell themselves they are the good guys. And that is how you get a two-tiered system that is so frustrating. But what I want to help you, my fellow Americans, understand tonight, if you were to back them in a corner and say to them, "You horrible person, how could you let this happen?" They would respond to you, "You horrible person, how could you stand for the unraveling of the great society? How could you stand for the dismantling of a nation by the total loss of the presidency and the legitimacy thereof?" Let me explain it like this, and I'm fixing to move on to another subject, but I really feel like we need to talk about this. I want you to imagine an engineer. He's a good guy, the county engineer. He's an honest man, does his job well, and they call him out to inspect a little pedestrian bridge that you walk across at the city park. And he goes and does his inspection, takes the samples, runs his test, and he finds something. He finds out the concrete in the foundation was not poured right, compromised. He finds air pockets, voids, cracks coming beneath the surface. So he brings it to the town council, and what do? Shut it down immediately. Rope it off, tear it out, rebuild. Everyone agrees. Bad concrete means you cannot trust the structure. Nobody argues, nobody hesitates, nobody says, well, people have been walking on it for years and nothing's happened. They understand fraud in the foundation vitiates the whole structure. Now, that same engineer gets another phone call the next day. He's called to go inspect a different bridge, but not a pedestrian bridge, not a bridge you just walk across occasionally. This is the major bridge into the city. This is where all the money flows across on 18-wheelers. Millions and millions of people go over it every day, depending on this bridge for the flow of normalcy of life. Ambulances have to have that bridge. Fire trucks got to have that bridge. Food shipments, power crews, the entire economy of the region flows across that bridge. So he does his inspection and he finds the same thing: bad concrete, compromised foundation, voids, cracks, same fraud in the mix. So he rushes to the city council and tells them, and suddenly those very ones that were screaming about the little bridge shut it down. Now it's complicated. Now it's of consequence. See? What happens? The language changes now. Nobody disputes the findings. Nobody tells him he's wrong. Nobody questions his engineering. What they dispute is not the foundation, but the remedy. They say, well, this bridge has been standing for years. Traffic is flowing. People depend on it. A rebuild would cause panic, cost billions. It would take years. It would shut down all income. Why don't we just monitor it? Let's reinforce the surface. Let's paint some new lines over the top of it. And you understand, the concrete did not change. The risk did not change. The engineering did not change. What changed was the cost of acknowledging the truth. When the bridge was small, tear it down, rebuild, move on. When the bridge was above the clouds, pretend, patch, and pray. That, my friends, is what you have lived through in the last 4 years. And it's time for you to understand what's happened to you. You were not crazy. You were not a bad engineer. Yes, you found air pockets in the mail-in ballots. You sure did. The problem was the remedy was too expensive. The principle never changes. The fraud has never disappeared. And the danger has never diminished. But the consequences of applying the principle has become too great. So they redefined safety and renamed it as what? Continuity. They redefined justice as what? Stability. They've redefined truth as survival. Whatever we have to do to survive. Now, I want you to understand that in 2020, we found the air pockets. All right? Lawsuits were filed. My God, they were filed all over the country. Dozens of them. In multiple states by multiple parties. And what happened to those lawsuits? Dismissed for standing, procedural issues, let's see, timing, filed too early or filed too late, dismissed for jurisdictional problems, dismissed for failure to state a claim, dismissed. But here is what's interesting. Those cases were dismissed before a court ever looked at the evidence because the courts never wanted to see the air pockets. The courts found ways not to look at the evidence. Legal technicalities that allow judges to say, we don't have to decide this. Now, wait a minute. Everything else has to be decided, but what you must understand, when you're above the cloud line, the rules change. And to their minds, it is for the good. Now, let me try to bring this down to earth, because let me give you an example. You don't need a law degree to understand what I'm about to teach you, my fellow American. You don't need philosophical intelligence, just a basic human experience. You walk into a restaurant, okay? Come on, go with me. Let's go into a restaurant. Nice place. We've already checked the reviews. We're hungry. We sit down. We order. But in the kitchen, there's another scene going on that we're not privy to. The cook is contagiously sick, coughing all over the kitchen. I mean, contagious. Shouldn't be anywhere near food. Now, the moral truth is simple and obvious. The sick cook should not prepare food for other people. Go home. That principle is not controversial. We all agree that's what you should do. That's not political. That's basic hygiene, ethics, human decency. But here's the situation. It's Saturday night. The restaurant packed out. Credit cards being swiped one after the other. Orders are flying in, and he is the only cook on shift. Now, the owner knows the cook is sick. He knows it. But if he sends the cook home, which is the remedy, the kitchen shuts down. People that's already ordered don't get their food. Bad reviews would go up. Food would get wasted. Money would get lost. Reviews would tank. Maybe the restaurant would have to close. So what does the owner do? Not what he should do. He makes a calculation. He tells the cook, stay in the back. We don't want to see you. Wash your hands more. Don't tell anyone. We'll get through tonight. Now, did the truth change? No. Did the danger disappear? Did the cook suddenly become non-contagious? What changed, students? The owner's willingness to act on the truth, because the cost of acting became too high. And after 4 years of studying this subject, that, my friends, is what happens with election fraud. Everybody knows the cook is sick. Everybody knows. The judges know. The legislature knows. The media knows. The politicians know. They know the concrete's bad. They know fraud corrupts everything it touches, but they've made a calculation that the cost of acknowledging the truth is higher than the cost of living with the lie. They tell us, keep eating. Come on, it's good. And pray nobody gets sick while they're doing it. What I'm giving you tonight is not cynicism. It's a diagnosis. The American judiciary operates by an unspoken rule. A rule that's never been written in any law book, never taught in any law school, never acknowledged in any courtroom. But it governs everything. And here's the rule. Are you ready? Better to live with a poisoned bloodstream than to risk open heart surgery on the republic. I personally just dealt with this last week. I stood in a federal courthouse before a federal judge having filed a lawsuit against a government entity. And it was so painfully obvious to the judge that this government entity had wronged us. It literally was so obvious that the magistrate pulled me to the side and they literally tried to settle financially with me right then. Do you know why? They want it to go away, but they just don't know me. It's not going anywhere. I'm going to trial with a jury. Why? Because they want the cost of what it's going to cost our government here locally is high. And they would rather push it away than to deal with it. And so I want you to understand tonight, my fellow Americans, I need you to grasp what happened in your nation. They know we have a problem. Everybody knows we had one. They just cannot afford to fix those problems. But let me tell you, that's what happened with Rome. Their Senate was so full of fraud, they literally thought the empire was too big to fail. In France, Versailles, the same thing. The monarchy was so wicked and lascivious. And then the Tsar of Russia, all those nations kept putting off their fraud. But the problem is, when legitimacy is deferred too long, and let me break that down for you, and I need you to hear me. This is important. Legitimacy is like credit. You can borrow against it if you're legitimate. You can run up a tab. You can say, we'll deal with this later. But eventually, the bill comes due. And if you've been borrowing too long, if you've been deferring too much, if you've been making promises you cannot keep, you go bankrupt. And every time a court refuses to examine fraud because the consequences are too severe, they're borrowing against legitimacy. Every time the system says we know there's a problem, but we can't afford to fix it right now, they're running up a tab with the American people. Every time the system does that fraud is untouchable at certain levels, they're writing a check that future generations will have to cash, the loss of legitimacy. And here's what worries me. We're not the first civilization to think like this. Every major empire, the bill for legitimacy always comes due. Always. And that's where we are right now in America. The legitimacy of our government, by not dealing with this 4 years ago, mark my words, they're still going to have to deal with the 2020 election. Believe that. For those of you that's lost hope, I haven't, because I know the bill's coming due. And I know Fulton County is the beginning of the bill getting paid. Truth may be a long time coming, but when it comes, it does not take long. And what we have to do, and every one of us, when you understand what I'm describing, when you really see the hypocrisy, the double standard, the altitude problem, there's a strong temptation to get cynical. The temptation to say none of it matters. The whole thing's rigged. Why bother participating? I understand that temptation, my friend. I feel it too. I have felt it. But I want to warn you against it. Because cynicism is exactly what they want. Think about it. If you believe fraud is unaddressable, you stop fighting. If you believe the system is irredeemably corrupt, you stop engaging. If you believe truth doesn't matter above a certain altitude, you stop demanding it. Cynicism does not threaten power. Cynicism serves power. A cynical population is a manageable population. A cynical population stays home on election day. A cynical population doesn't organize. They don't protest. They don't demand accountability. A cynical population says, what's the point? Don't give them that. Don't let the hypocrisy of the system turn you into exactly what the system needs you to be. They need you to be angry. They need you to be frustrated. They need you to be demanding. They need you to be cynical. Because cynicism is surrender disguised as sophistication. Cynicism is giving up while pretending you're just too smart to try. You'll meet people like that every day. I'm not fooling with it. I'm too smart for all that. That's cynicism. Don't do it. Don't do it. The real issue is what happens when a society stops believing in truth as the foundation of legitimacy. Now, I want to close this segment tonight because here we are, America 2025. We're faced with courts that was not willing to deal with this problem. And they literally pawned it off to another generation. A lot of people have chosen it. Most people. They've chosen to be cynical. You've got two choices. Number one, you can accept it, that this is just how things work. Or number two, you can reject it. You can reject the premise that some fraud is too big to address. You can reject the premise that stability is more important than truth. You can reject the premise that the system's survival matters more than the system's legitimacy. And you can demand truth and believe for truth and wait for truth. Because I want every one of you to know something. If you've understood what I'm saying, you're probably feeling something. And that may be what we call grief. Not anger, not fear, but grief. Because what I'm describing is a loss. The loss of the country you thought you lived in. The loss of the justice system that we were taught to believe in. Grief is the right response to loss. It's okay to mourn and to feel the weight of what we've endured. We were told fraud vitiates everything. We believed it. We built our understanding of justice on it and discovered now that it has a limit that does not apply above the clouds. That's a loss. There's a thing about grief. Grief's not the end. Grief is the beginning of something new. When you grieve a loss, you're not giving up. We have grieved a loss in this nation. But you have to acknowledge the reality so you can move forward. And moving forward is what we have to do now. Because here's the truth. That principle is not dead. Fraud still vitiates everything. And these judges, what they did, they know. Every judge that rejected this knows it's going to come out. They're just praying it does so on somebody else's watch. Fulton County, Georgia, you're the beginning. Because I tell you and the whole world, fraud still vitiates everything. And here's what that institutional mind cannot grasp. I know a God who specializes in this situation. The one who sits in heaven and laughs at the schemes of men. I know the God who told us through Joseph, through David, through Daniel, through every prophet that ever stood against corrupt power, what man meant for evil, I will turn for good. He proved it with the return of Donald John Trump. What they tried to do, we had to sit and wait for 4 years. But when God got the last word, you listen to me, Donald Trump is back in office because fraud did vitiate everything. You remember, truth is never, ever dependent on a justice system. Truth lives on its own. And they may have think they've gotten by with something, and that delay means victory. And you may think by running out the clock that you won, Fulton County, but you've just given God more material to work with. You've made the redemption story more dramatic. You've set the stage for a deliverance that will be talked about for generations, because our God doesn't just expose evil, he repurposes it. You understand that? He doesn't just expose evil, he repurposes evil for his good. He takes the very weapons formed against his people and his president and turns them into instruments of his blessing. He takes the years that the locusts have eaten and restores them. He takes the lies that were meant to enslave us and uses them to awaken us. He takes the neighbors that meant to shut you down to bring you your biggest financial blessing. Fulton County is just the beginning. One crack in the dam. And once truth starts flowing, my fellow American, you cannot stop it. You can delay it, you can deny it, but you cannot hide from it. Because the truth isn't just an idea. Truth is a person. His name is Yeshua. And he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And if truth is on your side, what can the guardians of lies do against you? America, I've tried to teach you tonight. I've tried to explain what you've just lived through. Yes, the system is hypocritical. The courts have failed in the past. The principle has been selectively applied. The damage has been done. But we serve a God that is not limited by human courts. I'm so glad about it. I'm so glad about it. We serve a God that's not bound by institutional timelines or Supreme Courts. We serve a God who takes exactly this kind of mess and makes it into a testimony. So don't lose hope, America. Our best days are right here. And in my monologue tonight, which starts in just a few minutes, I've got some news for you. Trump 28. We need to talk about that. Don't give in to despair. Don't let their temporary victory become your permanent defeat, America, because temporary is all they get and permanency belongs to God. The truth is coming, friends. It's coming to Fulton County. It's coming to every state, to every institution. It's coming to every judge who thought they could defer it past their watch. And when it arrives, it will arrive. Not with vengeance, not with violence, but with the quiet confidence of people who knew all along that fraud truly does vitiate literally everything. 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 I'll be right back.
Robotics, AI, electric vehicles, defense systems, solar, medical technology. All of them are ravenous for silver, not gold. Gold has a sister, and she is being consumed.
Would you bring me some tea,
They
baby?
are Yahweh's money, created by his hand, tested by time, trusted by civilizations that actually understood collapse. While everyone crowds the gold counters, silver disappears into the machines that run our world. The Romans knew, biblical merchants understood, but we've forgotten, trading substance for paper promises. Watch your dollars print into worthlessness, while silver builds the future. Traditional dealers mark up everything, a constant leak, a slow bleed from your investment. But there's another way, a cooperative approach. No markups, no commissions. Buy at cost. Direct access to God's money. Visit www.godsmoney.info. Book your free 1-hour appointment. From illusion to substance, from paper to permanence, the choice is yours.